Hi, we're going to be studying what to me is one of the most amazing characters in the Bible. It's a person that came out of a background of pagan idolatry and ended up immensely blessed by God, blessed in every way, blessed spiritually, blessed with friends, blessed with influence, blessed with material things even. And looking at this person's life, we're going to see a number of qualities that I believe attract the blessing of God. Would you like to have a big bullseye painted on your back that attracts blessings? Well, then you need to pay attention to this message, because we're going to be looking at qualities that attract the blessings of God. You may be in a season of life right now that's very difficult. I know there are people here, people watching, that some things have gone very wrong in your life. You are not experiencing the bright, blessed future that you had hoped for, or perhaps that you had seen. Maybe some relationships have gone very wrong. Maybe some career things or business or with your health or any number of things. And the book of Ruth opens up with a family where everything went wrong. I would encourage you later today to read the whole story. It's only 4 chapters long, and it is very, very moving. In fact, I can't remember ever having read the book of Ruth where I haven't wept. I cry pretty easy, admittedly. It doesn't take much to get my eyes leaking. But Ruth is one of those things. For me, it's very emotive, and there's good reason for that. There was a man in Israel, lived in Bethlehem with his family. His name was Elimelech. He was married to a woman named Naomi. They had 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. There was a famine in the land, and Elimelech decided to move his family away. Not a wise move. They left the promised land. They left Israel. They left the place where they were planted, and they went into a pagan nation. They moved to the land of the Moabites, and when they got there, Elimelech died. Naomi is widowed. The 2 boys, Mahlon and Chilion, married a couple of Moabite girls, and then the boys died. And so we've got these 3 destitute women. There's Naomi, there's Orpah, and there's Ruth. They've lost their livelihood. They've lost the men in their lives. Everything is gone. It's quite emotional. And Naomi gets rumor that God has blessed the people in Israel, that their crops have come in again. And she says, I'm going back to my home in Bethlehem. And the girls say, well, we want to go. She said, no, you go back to your gods and go back to your own people. Go get yourself some husbands. There's no point you coming with me. I've lost it all. Your lives are not going to be good if you come with me. And Orpah went back to her people and to her gods. Ruth, on the other hand, said, no, I'm not leaving you. Your God's going to be my God. Your people are going to be my people, Naomi. I'm not leaving. She says, okay. And they come back, and they have nothing. And one of the laws in Israel, the poor of the land could go in the fields after the reapers had gone through, and they could pick up whatever grain was left. And so Ruth goes as a poor person into a field to glean what she can after the reapers have gone through. And there's a wealthy, influential, godly man who takes notice of her. His name was Boaz. Well, the story goes on. They fall in love. He marries her. She becomes a mother. Her needs are met. Naomi's needs are met. She becomes influential. She goes from poverty to wealth. She goes from being a nothing to being an influential character in the Bible. She goes from having no man to having one of the best men in the land that loves God, that loves her. Her whole life just turned around, and you look at her and say, but Ruth, how blessed you are. And some people would say, lucky Ruth. You know, a recipient of a sovereign blessing of God. Well, I think that's probably partially true. I think the sovereignty of God had something to do with it. But I also think that Ruth was unusually favored by God and blessed by God because of certain qualities in her life. You see, there are certain traits in people's lives, certain qualities that if they will exemplify them, if they incorporate them into their lives, they sort of paint a big bullseye on their back for the blessing of God. And I honestly think that Ruth, as you look at the story, there are certain qualities that stand out about her that caused her to be unusually favored, that attracted the blessing of God to her. And I want to talk to you about 5 qualities that we find in her life, 5 qualities that attract the blessing of God. And the first one is this: Ruth was determined to serve God. She had a radical determination to serve God. Look with me in Ruth chapter 1, verse 14. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. She said, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me." And when she saw that she was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her. Ruth was determined to follow Naomi. She was determined to follow Naomi's God. Very different than Orpah. Both women were very emotional, and I think emotions are a good thing. I think when you come into contact with the truth, it can be a very emotional thing. I tend to be an emotional person. I cry easy, sometimes to the embarrassment of my family. You know, if we watch a show that's got some moving part, I know everybody's looking at me, "Dad's crying again." Yeah, well, sorry, it's just the way I'm wired up. But here Orpah cries, and she goes back. Ruth cries, but she clings. It's not enough just to be moved emotionally. You have to determine to follow God. And she was indeed determined that she was going to follow the Lord. Look in chapter 2 and verse 11. And Boaz answered and said to her, "It has been fully reported to me, all that you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, and how you've left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and have come to a people whom you did not know before. The Lord repay your work, and a full reward be given you by the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." Now, Ruth left everything, just like Abraham of old. She had seen something in his Israelite family that absolutely arrested her heart. She had seen something that she'd never experienced, worshiping the gods of Moab. There was a reality in this family, something about this God of Israel. She said, "Nothing will keep me apart from this unless I die. I am in and I am all in." And I want you to take note, Ruth did not decide to follow God because of some material blessing that she'd experienced. In fact, up to this point in her life, she had experienced just the opposite. She'd lost everything. She'd lost her father-in-law. She'd lost her husband. She'd lost her brother-in-law. She'd lost her livelihood. There was nothing economically that would have been an incentive for her to follow God, yet she realized, no, this thing is real, and she didn't blame God for anything that happened. If you started following Jesus because of the promise of him meeting your need, you jumped on board for the wrong reason. And don't get me wrong, our God is a God that supplies all of our need according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. He does take care of us. He does add all things on to us, even as Jesus said. But that is not a good reason to follow him. Ruth's heart fully belonged to God. And when God finds that kind of a heart, it attracts his strength. It attracts his blessing. Secondly, Ruth was hopeful and bright, as opposed to being dark and bitter. Now think of it. She's come back to Bethlehem. She and Naomi have nothing. They do not even have food to eat. And this is what she says to her mother-in-law in chapter 2 and verse 2. So Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, please let me go to the field and glean heads of grain after him in whose sight I may find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. In other words, she's saying, look, I'm going to find someone that will be kind to me. Let me go out, Naomi. I'm expecting kindness. I'm expecting to find favor. That was an amazing attitude to find in the midst of the kind of circumstance that she was in. Here she's hopeful. She's bright. She's positive. By contrast, look at Naomi, chapter 1 and verse 19. Now the two of them went until they came to Bethlehem. And it happened when they had come to Bethlehem that all the city was excited because of them. And the women said, is this Naomi? But she said to them, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has afflicted me? Now, this is truly stated, but it is not a statement of truth. It's truly stated that it is exactly what Naomi said, but she was in error. She blamed God for everything that had happened. You know, there was no indication that God had led them to move. In fact, you look at the principle of Scripture, they shouldn't have moved. But they went ahead and did it, and I think they got themselves right out of the will of God. And the boys, Mahlon and Killian, you know what those names mean in the Hebrew? Sickness and consumption. Who would name their kids sickness and consumption? But apparently they were pretty sickly, and they died. And Naomi now is blaming God, and she comes back and she tells all the women there in Bethlehem, look, my name's no longer Naomi. Naomi means pleasant. Don't call me pleasant. I've changed my name. Call me Mara. That means bitter. She said, I'm a bitter woman. And she said, the Almighty, he's afflicted me. You know what word she used for God? El Shaddai. The all-sufficient God, the God of abundant supply. She's basically saying, God has it, he can help me, but instead, he's taken out all the pillars of my life. He's robbed me of everything good in my life. He's left me destitute. He's afflicted me, and I am bitter as a result. But Naomi, though she was bitter, didn't influence Ruth in that way. It's an amazing thing. Naomi basically is her mentor. And Ruth seemed to just have picked up the positive things, and she shunned the things that would have been negative. Ruth never echoes the same bitterness in her life at any point in the story. It's one of the things that I love about Ruth and that stands out about Ruth. Ruth could have said, what kind of a God would allow these things? She knew, that's what Naomi's been saying. God's done this. God testified against me. The Almighty, he has it all. But he made me a widow. He killed my husband. He killed my boys. And I'm bitter. And Ruth could have said, what kind of a God would do this? I'd be better off worshiping Chemosh, the God in Moab. But she didn't. Ruth was hopeful and bright. You know, when I went outside this morning to get my truck and come to church, there was a hummingbird sitting up in the olive tree in our front yard. I like hummingbirds. I like the noise they make. And they're sort of like little helicopters, that go around. We have lots of them here in the Southland. They fly all over and they find beautiful flowers. They get the nectar out of those, and they look for life. They look for beauty. On the other hand, there's another bird that's quite common here in the Southland. Most people mistake them for hawks. They go, oh, look at the pretty hawk. And I'm thinking, that's not a hawk, it's a turkey buzzard. We've got lots of turkey buzzards here. If you see them close up, they're ugly as. They're just horrible looking. And they look for roadkill. They look for a squirrel or a dead possum or whatever, and they live on what's dead and gone. They live on what's decayed. They live on what was. The hummingbird will fly right over that roadkill and ignore it and find the beautiful flower, find life, find color, find beauty. Both birds find exactly what they're looking for. The one that looks for what's dead and gone and decayed, they gravitate towards it and they find it. The one that's looking for color and beauty and life, they find it. And friend, most of us find exactly what we're looking for. It pays to be hopeful and bright. And then the third thing that stands out to me about Ruth was action. She did something. She gave God something to work with. We read in chapter 2 and verse 2, she said, look, let me go out. Let me work. I'm going to find favor. Something good is going to happen. And then look in verse 7. Boaz's foreman is reporting back about Ruth, and he says this, and she said, please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and has continued from morning until now, though she rested a little in the house. The girl has been working all day long. And from this point on, Boaz gives her permission to work in his fields and to follow his reapers. And unbeknownst to her, he tells the men, he said, look, you see this girl here? I want you on purpose to let a lot of grain fall behind you, right in her pathway, so that she's able to gather up lots of extra for her and for her mother-in-law. Now, Ruth could have sat home all day with Naomi and prayed for God's blessing and provision, and they both probably would have starved. Instead, she did something for God to work with. She got up and moved. When she got out there, God began to guide her unconsciously. And then I look at another thing that just stands out about Ruth's life. That is her gratitude. She had a grateful heart, even for small blessings. Look in chapter 2 and verse 10. Boaz has just spoken kindly to her. Verse 10 of chapter 2, so she fell on her face, bowed down to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes that you should take notice of me since I'm a foreigner? Look in verse 13. Then she said, let me find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me and have spoken kindly to your maidservant, though I am not like one of your maidservants. The Message Bible puts it this way. She said, oh, sir, such grace, such kindness, I don't deserve it. You've touched my heart, treated me like one of your own, and I don't even belong here. I remember one year the kids were small. We adopted a family for Christmas. They were quite poor, going through a very rough time, and we took the kids out and we shopped for the mom and dad. We got presents for the kids, and then we went to the store and we bought all of the stuff so they could have a beautiful Christmas meal. And we went to their home, which was a little tiny, basically a one-room place. When they got in bed, the doorknob got in bed with them. It was so small. And we knocked at the door, and they sort of sheepishly answered. We said, hey, we have some things for you. We wanted to bring Christmas to you. They opened the door, and we brought all these wrapped gifts in and brought all the food in. And I'll never forget it. The husband started to cry. And then the wife started to cry. And then I started to cry. And then my wife is crying. Our kids are deeply moved. And I realized we were standing on holy ground. And the man suddenly just acted like we weren't even there. And he began to thank God for God's goodness, tears streaming down his face, began to thank God for God's generosity, began to thank God for God blessing him. And it was an astonishing moment. I guarantee you that family had all of heaven's attention because of their grateful hearts. By contrast, when I was an assistant pastor out in the Inland Empire for a couple years, one of my duties was on occasion to take groceries to families in the community in need. Sometimes it was a blessing. They'd be very thankful, and it was just a fun experience. But there was a few times it wasn't fun at all. On occasion, you'd go to a family, and they acted like everything was owed to them. And on a couple of occasions, I got a tongue lashing because their favorite foods weren't included. Very critical of the food that we brought to them. And why didn't you bring this? And why didn't you bring that? Listen, that attitude they had, it was not going to attract future blessing. It was going to repel future blessing. Be grateful for the things in your life. Be thankful to God. Be thankful to people. Thank you is a very big, very important word. In Deuteronomy 28, God says, I set before you blessing and cursing. He goes through all these curses, all these blessings. And the whole thing pivots on a couple of verses. And I want to read them to you from the Amplified Bible. Just listen. Deuteronomy 28, verses 47 and 48. God said, because you did not serve the Lord your God with joyfulness of mind and heart, in gratitude for the abundance of all with which he has blessed you, therefore you will serve your enemies and you will be in want of all things. God said, because of the lack of a grateful heart, you won't get the blessing. Finally, Ruth put others first. It's an outstanding thing in her life. And we read in verse 11 in chapter 2, Boaz said to her, look, it's been fully reported, everything you've done for your mother-in-law, how you've been kind, you left your family and you have taken care of this woman. And then look in chapter 3, verse 10, what Boaz says to her. Then he said, blessed are you of the Lord, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning, and that you did not go after young men, whether poor or rich. Ruth could have said, man, what the heck am I doing? I'm throwing my life away. I'm going to go get myself a man. I'm not going to spend any more time with this old woman. She didn't do that, and apparently she had some things going on. Boaz was much, much older than she was. And he said to her, look, girl, you could have gotten any boy you wanted. You could have gotten a poor boy. You could have gotten any of the rich boys. But you didn't do that. You put your life on a back burner and you've been taking care of your mother-in-law. God bless you for that, girl. God bless you for that. Ruth put her mother-in-law before herself, and it wasn't because Naomi required it. In fact, Naomi tried to get Ruth to not do it. And whether she was conscious or unconscious in doing so, Ruth put a spiritual law into motion. Proverbs 11:25 says, the one who blesses others is abundantly blessed, and those who help others are helped. Jesus said, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Ruth was just reaping what she had sown, and sooner or later, so do every one of us. It is one of the unbreakable laws of the kingdom. It pays to get the right kind of seed in the ground. If you just took one small part of this message and applied it, it could change your whole life. The blessings of God could roar to life where it seems like things have been dormant and things have not been happening. I have a friend that used to like to work on his car quite a bit. He had an old Chevy. It was a beautiful car, and he rebuilt the entire engine. And then he got in to turn it on, he turned the key, and nothing happened. He thought, what's wrong? What's wrong? Well, his brother came over, and his brother was much more of a mechanic than he was. His brother said, let me see. He popped the hood, or popped the bonnet, depending on where you are right now. Went under there, made one small adjustment, said, try now, and boom, the engine roared to life. Sometimes it's the smallest of adjustments that we make. Just a small decision, you know what? I'm gonna start doing this in my life, or I'm gonna leave off doing that, and I'm gonna apply this principle that I heard. And it can change everything. So I wanna encourage you, even if it was one thing that you got from the message today, apply it. Don't just be a good listener, but be a doer of the word, and you will be blessed in your doing. And as I close today, I just want to encourage you, if you've been watching our broadcast for a while, if it's been feeding you spiritually, if it's been a blessing to you at all, I want you to consider becoming a partner with us and seeing that someone else is blessed. We take the gospel around the world. It's dubbed and subtitled into numerous languages, but we can't do it alone. So please pray about becoming a partner to help someone else the same way that you have been helped. We'll see you next time. God bless you.
I still remember his message about the 5 P's. And one P was play. He said, yeah, golf saved my life. And he said, I like to see explosions. And I really loved that. And I could remember that. I mean, he's in explosions himself. Yeah. Even tonight, it was awesome. The people, they want to be radical for Jesus. But you know, we need to really push that boundaries, because we are all very sleepy. But in our heart, we want to be radical for Jesus.
We really felt that God was breaking through something. Heaven was open, and that's what it's all about. People were touched, people got saved. And I think it's always great, because we think globally, and we want to go, you know, for everything. And so it's always great for pastors to connect and to get to know other pastors. And that's why we think it's a good thing to let him go, to get inspired, to get new vision, and bring that back into church.
It is always so encouraging to hear what God has done through the broadcast. And if the Answers broadcast has done anything in your life, if it's been a blessing to you, please get in contact with us. Send us an email, send us a letter. We would love to hear from you. We want to hear what the Lord has done, and thank God together with you for how He is using the broadcast. It's literally touching lives around the world. And again, we're so encouraged when we hear from people. So please take the time, send us an email, drop us a line, get in touch with us. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Answers with Bayless Conley. For more information and inspiration, visit answersbc.org.